Then came Massachusetts. Robin said, I've got this idea of a song. He sang the melody, and I just remember our jaws dropping.
When we sing songs like, you know how easy it is to hurt me, it's Barry and Robin singing in unison. But they mesh together so well that it sounds like one voice. But it's a different voice from them separately.
Here's something that shouldn't make sense. The guy who gave the world the happiest falsetto in pop history still can't get through one of his own songs without his throat locking up. Barry Gibb is 78 now. The second those first three notes of "How Can You Mend a Broken Heart" come on, whether it's a stage speaker or an old radio, he's right back in 1970, staring at the brother who just walked out the door. Now, Barry Gibb has revealed the true reason why this particular song is so emotional to him, and what he said is truly mind-blowing. Let's get into it.
Kind of sounds, but that you've stayed together for 35 years and your family.
Well, we all have families. Yeah.
But you know, I mean, I can't spend 10 minutes with my mother.
Well, we don't know your mother, so.
To really get why it was so rough when things fell apart, you've got to understand what made them tick as a group. They weren't just three brothers who happened to start a band. They were the Bee Gees, and that name meant way more than just a label. It was like a whole vibe, a sound, a cultural thing that people just felt. Barry, Robin, and Maurice were almost like one person in three bodies, glued together by family, talent, and this ridiculous ability to harmonize perfectly, like they'd been practicing in heaven or something. By 1970, their three-part harmony was unstoppable. They were selling out stadiums, shaping pop music, and basically making anyone who listened want to wear polyester, whether they liked it or not. But the fame game has a weird way of messing things up. The same pressures that made them so tight also started to push them apart, and little disagreements snowballed into full-on shouting matches in the world's fanciest studios. Stuff that started over who hit, which note turned into fights over money, ego, and just feeling lost, which is basically what happens when family dinners go sideways, just with more glitter and way fewer vegetables. The tension kept building and building, like one of those cartoon springs that's about to pop, until one day it finally did. It was Robin, whose voice had always balanced Barry's perfectly, who finally said what everyone had been avoiding for months. He was done. He was leaving the band. For Barry, it wasn't just a disagreement. It felt like losing a piece of himself, like someone had ripped a bit of his soul out with the dullest knife imaginable. He remembers the room going flat, like someone had turned off all the lights and left him staring at a mess of wires, trying to make sense of it. After that, they just stopped talking. The silence wasn't just quiet. It filled every corner where their harmonies used to live, and it hit harder than any drum or guitar ever could. The Bee Gees, the band that had been a part of people's lives forever, just went quiet. And suddenly, it wasn't just music that was missing. It felt like something important had vanished.
50 years. Does a milestone make you feel old?
Yeah, I know. I felt old 10 years ago.
The 40th anniversary of a lot.
Yes, that was pretty tough.
The weeks just kind of drifted along, each one dragging a little more than the last, even though the rest of the world didn't slow down for a second. Barry's phone wouldn't stop buzzing. Calls from promoters, lawyers, record execs, each one sounding more impatient than the last, reminding him that contracts don't just disappear and that letting things slide too long could get expensive fast. The money side of things was stressful, sure, but that wasn't the real weight. That stuff could be handled. The bigger problem was way more personal. The brothers weren't talking. What once felt like this inseparable family unit had splintered into three different little islands, each one cut off from the others. That's when Maurice, the middle brother, the natural peacemaker, decided he had to do something. He wasn't flashy about it, never was. Maurice had this quiet, level-headed way of handling things, like he could smooth down sharp edges without anyone even noticing. He probably made a few low-key phone calls, sounding casual on purpose. "Hey, just swing by IBC Studios if you've got a minute. No agenda, no pressure. We can grab a coffee, maybe play a chord or two. Just come by." It wasn't an order, it wasn't a guilt trip. It was more like a gentle invitation, the kind of nudge only he could pull off. Barry was the first to show up, maybe just out of habit, maybe because being the oldest made him feel like he should set the example. He walked into the main studio, a place that used to buzz with energy and laughter, but now felt strangely hollow, almost like the walls were holding their breath. He sat down at the old Steinway. The same piano that had been played so many times its keys had gone a little yellow, the wood worn smooth from years of use. Without really planning to, his fingers drifted into a few soft, searching minor chords. The sound filled the space in that way only a piano in a quiet room can, lingering in the air like a question waiting for someone to answer it. Almost under his breath, like he wasn't even aware he was saying it out loud, Barry whispered, "How can you mend a broken heart?" And right then, someone showed up in the doorway, silhouetted against the hallway light. It was Robin. He'd caught the question, and without stopping to think, without even stepping all the way into the room, he answered, his voice carrying a mix of clarity and rawness. "How can you stop the rain from falling?" It was less like a reply and more like finishing a thought they'd both started years earlier, a kind of instinct that only brothers share. They didn't look at each other. They didn't hug. They didn't start hashing out lawyers, money, or all the bitter stuff that had piled up over the years. They didn't need to. The music was doing all of that work for them. They just started playing together, feeling their way around the old tension, letting melody act like a shield while harmony tested the waters. And somehow, in less than an hour, maybe 45 minutes, they had a verse, a chorus, and a bridge that felt almost too exposed, raw in a way that makes you wince and smile at the same time. The song wasn't so much written as it was dug up, like they were uncovering something buried deep in both of them. A piece of emotion that had been waiting for this exact moment to see the light again.
Thank you. But this man has been musical therapy for me. Oh, so that's my statement. Musical therapy. Thank you. Well, brought me through the darkness, and I'm smiling. Well, I want to send my love to my mom. Because she is the one that's really affected. She's 93 years old.
Barry Gibb has never really sugarcoated how heavy his life has been. He said it straight up in interviews and documentaries, his voice full of a kind of truth that fame can't cover up. You can have it all. Every platinum album, every Grammy, every sold-out show, every bit of adoration. But he said he'd trade it all in a heartbeat if it could buy him just 5 more minutes with Robin and Maurice. Just 5 minutes. Not on a stage, not in a studio, just in a room with the door closed, to finish the conversations that got cut off. That's why, on the rare occasions Barry does sing the song these days, he almost always keeps his eyes closed. It's not a stage trick or some kind of dramatic performer move. It's really just a way of protecting himself. He's not up there belting out a greatest hit. He's walking through a house made of memories, one room after another, each one filled with echoes of his brothers. The present is too sharp to face in those moments, so he goes inward, back to the past, where they're still there. The lyrics don't feel like polished poetry to him. They're more like notes from a family conversation that got interrupted but never finished, a meeting that in his heart never truly wrapped up. And every time he reaches the line, "Please help me mend my broken heart and let me live again," something happens. He's not a 78-year-old man anymore, standing under the stage lights. He's back in the studio as a young guy, powerless, listening to the door shut behind his brother, hearing that click of finality. That's the moment the song froze in amber for him. What the world hears as a timeless ballad was, for him, an apology he never got to say out loud. The words got trapped inside the melody, pressed into vinyl, and sent out to millions of strangers who found their own meaning in it. But the one person it was meant for never received it. The world got a masterpiece, sure, but Barry got stuck with something else entirely. A song that feels less like a triumph and more like a scar he's carried ever since. The song, How Can You Mend a Broken Heart, actually came out in 1971, not December 1970, like some people think, and it pretty much hit the American public right in the feels. It ended up being their very first #1 hit in the US, which was a huge deal for the brothers after reuniting, and it stayed at the top of the Billboard Hot 100 for 4 weeks straight, which is kind of wild when you think about all the other music that was out at the time. The timing was interesting too, because it was coming out right alongside George Harrison's My Sweet Lord and the Carpenters' Rainy Days and Mondays, so there was this whole vibe of vulnerability and emotion in the air, and the Bee Gees were right there at the forefront. Even the critics, who weren't always easy to impress, really responded to it. Rolling Stone, which was basically the Bible for music back then, called it white soul at its absolute finest, which basically meant that the Bee Gees had this amazing way of taking that raw, gut-wrenching R&B emotion and putting it into their own pop style. But the song really took on a life of its own when other artists started covering it. Al Green, for example, totally transformed it with his Memphis soul style, making it feel almost like a sermon, and then later on, Elvis Presley would use it to close out his Las Vegas shows, turning it into this big, dramatic anthem of loneliness that really connected with his fans. And even decades later, someone like Michael Bublé could take it, rap it in his smooth, modern style, and it still hits just as hard emotionally, which really shows how timeless the song is. The song's title ended up kind of representing the whole roller coaster of the Bee Gees story. Ups, downs, and everything in between. And it even became the name of the 2020 HBO documentary, The Bee Gees, How Can You Mend a Broken Heart? There's this one really striking moment in the film where Barry, older now, just sits there, and you can see everything he's been through on his face, his eyes welling up as he tells the story behind the song. That moment is exactly why people are still drawn to it. And honestly, you can feel the same raw, real emotion today that was there back in 1970. If you really sit down and listen to the original 1971 recording, you can hear all the little cracks and vulnerabilities in it. This isn't some perfectly polished pop song. It's more like a raw, honest moment captured on tape. Take Barry's lead vocal, for example. It's not the confident, booming voice of a superstar, but soft and almost whispered, like he's worried if he sings too loudly. The argument itself will start all over again. It's the sound of someone walking on eggshells. Then Robin comes in, not just singing backup, but actually joining the conversation. He's finally talking back, but in a way that supports rather than challenges, kind of like a musical olive branch. And beneath them both is Maurice, the anchor. He holds the low end, providing the foundation on bass and mellotron, and adding that quiet, twinkling electric piano fill that sounds like a single street lamp flickering to life on a dark, lonely street. He is the musical ground that allows his two high-flying brothers to find their footing. During the mixing process, the engineer noticed the distinct, unmusical squeak of the piano bench as Barry shifted his weight. In any other session, it would have been erased, a technical flaw to be scrubbed away. But they made a decision to leave it in. Perfection was never the mission that day. Truth was, the squeak was real. It was the sound of a human being in a room, shifting uncomfortably as he bled his heart out. The final track was the result of just 2 takes. No endless vocal overdubs, no studio trickery. It was 1 take for the raw emotion and a second for posterity. It was a lightning strike, a moment of desperate, accidental genius. It was and is one apology set to music. Part of what really gets to Barry is how much the song ended up taking on a life of its own. I mean, it started as this intensely personal thing, a way for him to process his own heartbreak, and then suddenly, it wasn't just his anymore. It was everywhere. People played it at funerals for relatives he'd never met, sent it to exes on scratched-up records, and somehow even danced to it at weddings that probably shouldn't have happened. And it's not like he's bitter about it. It's more like disorienting. Every time he hears even a watered-down Muzak version in a grocery store, something clicks, and he can't just keep walking like a normal shopper. He finds himself frozen for a second between the cereal aisle and the dairy case, stuck there feeling like he's been ambushed by a ghost he made public without realizing it. It's strange to think that something meant to be private can end up touching millions of strangers in ways he never imagined, making him feel famous and invisible at the same time. That line, "How can a loser ever win?" somehow became this unspoken banner for anyone who's ever felt completely beaten down by life. It's the kind of thing that belongs to every person who's ended up sitting on a cold street curb at 2 a.m. with nothing but a dying phone, a half-smoked pack of cigarettes, and the sinking feeling that, yep, you've just lost, big time. And the line itself kind of carries the answer, maybe you don't. Barry Gibb just happened to be the guy sitting at the piano, pen in hand, when this universal question, which, let's be honest, humanity has wrestled with forever, showed up and refused to be ignored. And somehow, in writing it down, he became its vessel. What started as his own private heartbreak ended up spreading across the world, turning into an anthem that anyone could claim for themselves. I mean, it's probably a weird mix of amazing and exhausting for him. On one hand, his song reaches millions, but on the other, it's like carrying your own heartbreak around in every record that gets played somewhere. So when Barry Gibb, at 78, says that this song still breaks his heart, he's not trying to be dramatic or sentimental. He's just telling it like it is. He's talking about what his music actually does, which is kind of amazing if you think about it. It takes a pain that can't be fixed and builds this beautiful, solid little vessel to carry it around. And then, it lets anyone else borrow that vessel when they need it. The next time you hear "How can you mend a broken heart?" try really listening. Pay attention to the tiniest crack in Barry's voice right before the last chorus, that subtle moment where the song almost lets itself fall apart. It's not a mistake. It's the sound of someone who's been forgiven but knows they'll never truly come home. And if you've ever had to apologize without saying a word, letting a melody do the heavy lifting of your regret, then you get it completely. You know exactly what that feeling is like. If you found this video thrilling, be sure to leave a comment, subscribe to our channel for more videos on your favorite icons.